Thanks for watching the Carolina Justice Report. I'm Rainey Romero with the Lovely Law Firm. Today we're talking about a topic that has rocked our community, the Britnee Drexel case. Do we have kind of, I know we're still kind of waiting on more details to come out with some parts of this, but do we know what led them back to Raymond Moody and kind of
That's
all that?
my favorite part of this story, because I think, and kind of how Heather Elvis, I think about her when I think about Britnee Drexel, when you think about high profile people going missing. But so the solicitor's office charged, I guess they had been investigating Raymond Moody, and then they charged him with obstruction of justice, which is the same charge that they charged the Moores with in Heather Elvis's case.
Right.
And it's kind of like a scare tactic, at least that's how I look at it. We're charging you with obstruction of justice because you're lying to us about your involvement. And Raymond Moody confessed and then took them to her body, which was in his yard.
So how does the obstruction of justice work? How do you charge somebody on that and why?
The Supreme Court, I think, is still deciding that. They just had arguments about if you
For the
can,
Moore case,
if
right.
if you can charge someone with obstruction of justice just because you feel like they're lying to you in an investigation,
Interesting.
because then you get to take away their freedom, right? You arrest them and then you get to interrogate them. All the things that you can't do if you're just going up to interview somebody.
Interesting.
And so I think in this case it worked, and I'm glad that they found Britnee Drexel's body. But I think that it's a slippery slope, I guess, to just start, when the investigators aren't getting answers they want, just to arrest you for obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
And see what the outcome is. Because in the Moore case, nobody confessed. And Sidney Moore is doing like 10 years or something for obstruction of justice because he lied to them about a phone call. And they didn't like
90
that.
seconds later, he says, okay, that wasn't true, and then tells the truth. So the obstruction of justice was an obstruction for 90 seconds. So that's what the Supreme Court of South Carolina is just heard arguments
Are
on.
they allowed to do it?
Is
And
that
it's
obstruction?
hard because in this case, I'm glad that he confessed, that got him to confess. But I just think on a grand scheme of things, to allow them to charge people with
Right,
obstruction of
general,
justice, just as part of an investigation to see if they'll flip or talk
Yeah.
or what comes out of that, is
Constitutionally, it feels icky.
dangerous. Yeah.
Icky and dangerous
Yeah.
as attorneys.
It's a line, a fine line.
And I also want to say this too. As a mother and as a woman, that is really hard to reconcile, right? That we recognize that this is a slippery slope because that it makes me cry. That family gets to bury their kid now. Do you know what I mean? And that gives them the closure of knowing what happened to her. So it's really hard to reconcile those things. And I know that like a lot of people when they watch this is going to really think that that's callous to say that this is a slippery slope on some level.
Yeah.
But we want to just acknowledge that like it's turmoil for us too, and we feel torn as a mother and a woman. We feel torn to say that, but it really is a slippery slope.
It isn't. And then I think about, because I am so happy that for Britnee Drexel's mom, who has been on the news, that she got this closure that she needed. But when I talk about a slippery slope, I'm also talking about Timothy Taylor, who the cops
Right.
and his family is speaking out now. Him and his father were accused of doing this to Britney Drexel when they had nothing to do with it at all.
And they had no evidence except
They
a
had no
jailhouse
evidence,
snitch.
and they were on national news look what these people did to this poor spring breaker. And so I think police investigations, it's so important how you do them to get justice for the families,
to do them right.
but also to not wrongfully accuse people of
Right.
crimes so heinous as this. And so I think,
I think we need to give folks a background on who Timothy is, just in case they don't know the story. So can you tell folks kind of about what the word on the street was that happened to Britnee before we actually found out it was Raymond Moody?
yeah, so I was a lot younger when this happened. And I just remember seeing it on the news, her going missing, because I vacationed in Myrtle Beach all the time before I lived here.
Yeah.
And then him and his father were accused of abducting her. And the story behind it was that I guess Timothy was in jail for an unrelated robbery, and a jailhouse
he took
snitch.
some money from the McDonald's he was working at.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
A jailhouse snitch said he told me that his dad and him kidnapped and killed Britnee Drexel.
Right.
The snitch trying to
Through an
get a
alligator
deal.
pit. or
Yeah,
something.
they
something
brought her
insane.
to like a house where she was basically like gang raped and then threw into an alligator pit.
Something
So,
crazy.
and what a horrible thing for her parents
Yeah.
to hear,
Yeah.
and then to just never
Yeah, so
mind, that
her
was
parents are worried about, oh my God, she's in an alligator pit. This is awful. His family is like, all he did was
He
take
took some
money
money from
from
McDonald's
McDonald's,
while he's
and
working
now all of
there.
a sudden he's wrapped up in this murder.
Yeah.
And so I feel for his family as well. I know
And I
they've
felt
been
for him, like-
they've been coming out.
Because it's one thing to take some money from the McDonald's you're working. It's a very different to say
Right.
that you raped and murdered a young woman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those are very different crimes.
Well, and it makes you wonder too. I mean, obviously, the whys could go on for days of the what ifs and whys of why this jail inmate kind of said that he heard these things. I mean, some people are saying, well, maybe this did happen to a different missing woman. And then others are saying, well, no, he just made this crap up. So it's hard to know too now, like why
there's
this
no-
story was
Well,
concocted.
what we find as
Jailhouse
lawyers,
snitches make up stories so that they can get deals on their own cases.
right, to get a lesser sentence.
To get a lesser
Gotcha.
sentence. So he's much more valuable, and they're much more likely to give him a deal if he testifies against whoever killed Britney Drexel. And he
Right.
opens up the case, and they're more likely to let the snitch out.
It's such a wild
and the
story,
problem-
though.
and
Like,
the problem
she was
is-
fed to alligators.
Yeah, it's
so
insane.
weird.
But it's like the Murdochs. Like we couldn't have ever predicted that either. So
Yeah,
who knows?
true.
But what we see is we see these jailhouse snitches doing this stuff because it's pay for play, right? I say whatever you need me to say, and you get your conviction, and I get out a little bit early. Everybody wins.
Right.
But the problem is they lie. And what happens is, and I'm not saying this happened here because we don't know, but what we see in cases, and we have seen before, and more than once, many times, we see a prosecutor or a police officer who is so desperate to get an answer
Yeah.
that they don't have, that they're willing to do whatever it takes to get that conviction, even if it's getting the wrong person.
Right.
Because that's a long time. 13 years is a long time not to know what happened to somebody.
Because it's hard to look at somebody's mom, at Britney's mom, and tell her we still don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and how could you not know? How could you not figure it out? And so they just try to rush to an answer. So I'm thankful that although the obstruction of justice thing makes me weary, I'm thankful that they kept at this investigation for so long, and that we
Yeah.
do finally have some closure, and that this guy Raymond Moody is finally removed from our community,
Yeah.
because
Can't hurt anybody else.
that is a scary monster
Very
type of
And
person.
I 100% give credit to Britnee Drexel's mother for keeping this at the forefront of the news, on top of mind, and pushing for prosecutors and police officers, investigators not to give up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It
think
takes,
how many-
it takes a mother,
Well,
okay?
yeah, well, and how many girls go missing that don't have that attention, and so they just
More
kind
than
of
not.
slip through the cracks.
and it's hard to grieve. I think Brittany's mom, I can't speak for her obviously, knew that she was grieving because she hadn't seen her daughter in so long. But to grieve and to still find the courage to make sure that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing and not let this investigation just go by the wayside was, I mean, she deserves all the credit. And
Absolutely, and in another state too. This wasn't even in her hometown. I mean,
And what people don't know about Britney Drexel's mother is that she advocates for missing people to this day because she doesn't want another family to feel like that.
When life gets ugly, justice is lovely, the lovely Lord.